kiddos, it's Jacqueline Cartin here from Pure Nutrition. We've decided to put together our wee Halloween video of making a nice pumpkin soup and a nice apple crumble, which hopefully you'll find enjoyable and helpful to try and keep in tradition and work ourselves through these challenging times. Okay, so let's now have a look at the ingredients and see what we need for the soup. It's going to be a pumpkin squash creamy soup. So first of all, we're going to have a wee look at the types of pumpkins there is. Now this larger type, which you would see in most supermarkets at the minute, I was told by a gardener a few years ago that this actual type is a decorative pumpkin. There's lots of chemicals used to make this so large in its growth, so this is not one that you would use for cooking. Whereas these types is the ones that we're going to use in the actual soup. So I'm going to use one small green pumpkin. If you can't get that, just double up on your butternut squash because the squash is in the same family. One sweet potato, one onion, 1 cube of root ginger, 2 cloves of garlic. If you want to add heat to it, a teaspoon of chili, 1 large handful of parsley, 1 cup of lentils, 1 tin of coconut milk, salt, black pepper, 2 stock cube, whatever you have in the cupboard's fine, and 2 tablespoons of oil. You can use coconut oil or olive oil or whatever type of oil you have in the cupboard. Now we're going to start preparing for the soup. We're going to prepare the pumpkin and the squash and sweet potato first and put it into the oven because we're going to roast that for around 30 minutes. We're going to start with this little small pumpkin, which has a really tough skin on it. So I have sliced it in the middle, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scoop out all the excess of the fibre and the seeds, and then I'm going to put it into the oven to roast. But as you can see, there isn't actually a lot of the pumpkin in there. That's why I like to use the butternut squash as well, because you actually get more of that chunkiness and flavour of the pumpkin from the butternut squash itself. So we're going to scoop these out and prepare them to get roasted. Okay, that's a wee bit futtery, so it's something you could get the kids involved in doing with you as well. Here we have it now scraped out, ready to be popped into the oven with a little oil drizzled on it for it to get roasted. And we're going to leave that to one side, and then we're going to prepare our butternut squash. The squash is easier prepared in that you can cut it like you would a turnip. So you can just cut it into rings, and then if it's organic, I usually keep the skin on, and if it's not, I usually take the skin off. So it's personal preference, but that you can actually roast it with the skin on as well. And as you can see here, there's a lot more squash than there is in with the pumpkin. There's a lot less to yield in it when you're actually preparing to cook it.
We are then going to de-seed the butternut squash by cutting round in circles and removing the seeds. We then take the de-seeded butternut squash, and as I'm using an organic one, we will keep the skin on for extra fibre. We will just cut it into squares before roasting. We will then prepare the sweet potato. Again, I will be keeping the skin on for extra fibre and cutting that up into cubes to add to the roasting pan.
We have our pumpkins all chopped, and now I've just made a few scores inside the small pumpkin, and we're going to put that onto a baking tray and drizzle with a little oil and a little salt and pepper. And then we're going to go to our bowl where I have chopped the squash and the sweet potato with the skins on, and we're going to put around a tablespoon of oil in there. Season with a little salt, little pepper, and coat with the oil. Pop onto a baking tray and they're ready to go into the oven.
So under gas mark 7 in the oven we have the squash, pumpkin and sweet potato roasting until tender, around 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay, now we have our pumpkin in the oven and our butternut squash and sweet potato roasting. Let's now start preparing the rest of our ingredients for the soup. The onion, the garlic, the ginger and the parsley.
Peel and chop the onion. Scrape the skin off the ginger root where possible with the back of a small spoon and then slice and chop down with a knife. Finally chop your peeled garlic and get your large bunch of washed fresh parsley and chop finely.
We're going to add a tablespoon of coconut oil in to the pot. I'm going to melt that down now before I add in my onion, garlic and ginger.
I'm going to add a little heat to this pot of soup, so I'm going to add a teaspoon of chilies and our washed lentils, and then finally our water and stock. Add the lid to the pot and allow to simmer for around 15 to 20 minutes.
We have our pumpkin and squash roasted and brought out of the oven, and now I'm going to scrape out from the container of the pumpkin. It's really easy to lift out now that it's been roasted. These little containers then, you can use these to make Halloween decorations. Put wee candles into those. That's going to give you a mixture of the orange and the green from the orange and green pumpkin. We've got a nice soft squash, sweet potato and pumpkin. And we're going to add all of this in now to our pot of soup. So now we've got our pot of soup here where we have our lentils, onions, garlic and ginger in the pot and chili, and we're now going to add in our squash, sweet potato and pumpkin. We're going to mix that all in, and then to that we're going to add our tin of coconut milk, our fresh parsley, teaspoon of salt and a little black pepper. You can serve it up chunky like this, or you can whiz it up, which I'm going to do now.
I've now blended the soup to a nice creamy consistency.
Okay folks, so now we've made our pumpkin soup. For these autumn evenings, we're going to have a wee look at a nice autumn Halloween dessert. So we're going to make a warming apple crumble. So let's have a look at the ingredients we're going to need for that. 150 grams of wholemeal flour. I'm using spelt flour here, but ordinary wholemeal is fine as well. 50 grams of oats. I'm using organic jumbo oats. 75 grams of butter, or if you want to do a vegan version, you can use vegan margarine. 25 grams of chopped nuts. 50 mils of maple syrup. You can use honey if you don't have maple syrup. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and you can use 3 large cooking apples, or because I'm using less sugars in it, I'm using eating apples. So you need 10 eating apples and an oven tray. Okay, so now we're going to start by preparing our apples for the apple crumble. So I'm going to start peeling the apples. We're going to put our oven on and we're going to put it at 160 or gas mark 4.
Now we have all our apples peeled, we are going to start cutting them up and putting them into the baking bowl.
And we are now going to add the cinnamon and the 25 ml of maple syrup to the apples. So just drizzle over 25 ml of maple syrup and add your teaspoon of cinnamon, which is optional, but cinnamon's very good for helping to maintain your blood sugars. So we're going to mix this in now. We're going to keep it sort of chunky, but some people like their apple pies with the apples quite cooked, so you can actually stew the apples for a little while before you put them into the oven. But I'm doing this where we're going to have it a little bit chunky. So you just prep your apples by peeling them, slicing them, adding your cinnamon and maple syrup, and now that's prepared, ready to put the topping on. So now we're going to prepare the crumble topping. We're going to start by getting our mixing bowl and adding in our flour and our butter. As I said earlier, if you wish to make this vegan, you can just use a vegan margarine. So we're going to mix this together till it's like a breadcrumb consistency. So just get that rubbed in. Okay, so now we have the butter and the flour all blended in together. It looks like breadcrumb texture. We're going to now add the rest of the ingredients. The porridge oats, the nuts, and the remaining maple syrup, 25 ml. And mix that all together. We've got all our crumble topping, it's all nicely mixed together. We're going to get our prepared apples in our baking tray and pour the crumble mixture over the top of the apples. Making sure you cover all the apples. And that's it, ready to be popped into the oven for 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, so we've got our apple crumble in the oven here now. I thought I would show you a really quick small apple pie idea that I use sometimes. All you need is puff pastry, which is really easy to get. This is the less healthier option, but it is quite tasty. I've got a little tray. I took 2 eating apples and I actually stewed these for about 10 minutes in about 2 tablespoons of water, and I've now cooled them down. Some people like that sort of appley sauce as opposed to the chunky, so I just thought I'd give you this different option to try as well. And then you're going to get a couple of cutters. If you don't have cutters, it's fine as well. I have used an upside down cup as well. So we're going to do small ones for the lids and we're going to do the bigger ones to put into the little tray. Okay, so we'll cut out a few of these. So you just lift it out, put it in and press it around, and it's okay if you don't have these little cup things, you can just butter the bottom of the tray and just put your little bit of pastry into the bottom of the tray, and you just pop that in, and then we're going to fill that with a little apple, and then using the smaller cutter I'm going to make a little lid for it. and pop that down on top, and then just press that in around it so it seals it. I'm going to make up 6 of those now.
When you have the bottom layer pastry put into the little pastry cases, you then just divide up the stewed apple into the little cases, and when you've that completed, just pop the lid on the top.
Ready for the oven. Okay, so if you want a more glossier finish on the little apple pies, I'm going to put a little bit of egg wash onto them. So I've sealed them a little bit more because they're so small, but they're absolutely fine without the egg wash.
Gas mark 7, 30 to 40 minutes until the apple pies are golden brown.
Now all the hard work's done, and I've made the soup, and we've made the crumble, and we've made some apple pies. But before we serve them up, I just want to chat a wee bit about the wastage that came from the apples and the pumpkins, because I really like to be able to have as little waste as possible. So the first one that I want to chat about is the peeling from the apples. These were really good quality eating apples, lovely and sweet. So what I usually do with these is I blend them down in the blender, and you can freeze them into wee containers, and I would add them into pancakes and smoothies. So you're not wasting any of it at all. And the waste from the large pumpkins, which we've decorated over here. I remember years ago that we used to make bracelets and necklaces from them. But you need to be careful with the little small pieces with children, but you could make decorations with them for Halloween. And it's a mushy, gooey substance here. So this is something you can get the kids involved in doing as well too, to separate it out from the pulp and then give them a wee wash. And then the last one, which was the pumpkin that we used in cooking, and which we ended up with the shell, the hard shell like this. These are good seeds, so you don't want these to go to waste. So you want to separate them out. Again, a great job for the kids. They enjoy doing things like that and getting a little bit messy. And then you can take them, and what I have done is I've separated some of them and I've roasted some of them, and we're going to serve them up now with our soup. Okay, so now we've got everything ready to dish out. So what we're going to do is, again, reusing. Here we've got the shell of the pumpkin that we cooked. You can use it as a decorative thing, but I'm also going to use it as a little soup bowl to actually dish out our lovely pumpkin and squash soup. So here we have our lovely pot of creamy soup. So now we have our soup dished out. We're going to garnish it with a little fresh parsley and some of our lovely toasted pumpkin seeds. Delicious. And now we have our apple crumble ready to dish out, lovely and warm from the oven. Smells really good. So let's get some into the bowl. Lovely and crunchy on top, and the lovely soft juicy sweet apples. And we can serve that with some custard or with some cream. There's one I use, and it's a plant-based creme fraiche, and it is really delicious, but you can choose yourself. But it's lovely with something nice and warming, a nice treat with a healthy slant. And lastly, we have our little apple puffs that we made from the puff pastry, and they've turned out really, really well. Very simple recipe. So just lift one out, get your dish, easiest way, turn upside down, comes out perfectly. They're a little bit delicate, and again, custard or cream, or just as it is. We'll put a little cream with this.
A lovely warming Halloween feast with hopefully something for everyone. Pure Nutrition is available for online video and phone consultations during these challenging times. Appointments can be made via email, Facebook or phone. Thank you.